What types of bad parenting do kids not recover from? The email notification on my phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m., just as I was finally falling asleep. Mom's name lit up the screen, and that familiar knot twisted in my stomach, the same one that had been there since I was 8 years old, tucking my baby brother Marcus into bed while she sobbed into her wine glass about Dad leaving us. Sarah, I know you're probably busy with your important life, but Marcus got arrested tonight. DUI. I can't handle this alone. I need you to come home. Please don't abandon me like everyone else has. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. 3 years of therapy, a successful practice in Chicago treating kids who'd been through exactly what I had, a book deal worth $200,000 sitting on my desk, and still, those 23 words made me feel like I was 12 again, making dinner for my 3 younger siblings while Mom locked herself in her bedroom with another headache. Don't respond immediately, I heard Dr. Reeves' voice in my head. Noticed the manipulation tactics. The guilt. The false urgency, But Marcus was only 24. Still living at home in Millbrook, Iowa, still under her thumb. Still playing the role of her emotional support animal, just like I had for 18 years before I finally escaped to Northwestern for my psychology degree. My laptop was already open on the kitchen counter, cursor blinking on page 247 of my manuscript. Chapter 15, The Parentified Child, When Children Become Caregivers. I'd been writing about Marcus in this very chapter, about how Mom had seamlessly transferred my responsibilities to him when I left for college. How she'd called him her little man and told him he was all she had left after I abandoned the family for my selfish dreams. The working title sat at the top of the document, The Perfect Mother, A Therapist's Journey Through Narcissistic Parenting. My editor, Janet, loved it. Said it would resonate with thousands of adult children struggling with similar trauma. She didn't know that Patricia Coleman wasn't a pseudonym, that my real mother would read every word, recognize every story, see herself exposed to the world she'd spent 28 years carefully curating. In Millbrook, population 4,200, Mom was still the beloved single mother who'd raised 4 kids, all by herself after her husband cruelly abandoned them. She volunteered at the church, organized the annual corn festival, and never missed a PDA meeting when we were kids. Everyone knew Patricia Coleman as the woman who sacrificed everything for her children. They didn't know about the nights she'd crawl into my bed when I was 10, crying about her loneliness, making me promise I'd never leave her. They didn't know she'd hidden my college acceptance letters from Stanford and Columbia because they were too far away. They didn't know she told my high school boyfriend David that I was emotionally unstable and not ready for a serious relationship when I was 17 and finally happy. I set the phone down and walked to my bathroom mirror. The woman staring back looked nothing like the anxious, people-pleasing child who'd raised her siblings. At 28, I had my mother's green eyes but none of her manipulative charm. I built this life carefully, brick by brick, choosing Chicago specifically because it was 300 miles from Millbrook, close enough to assuage my guilt, far enough to breathe. The phone buzzed again. Sarah. Please. I'm having chest pains. I think it's my heart. I can't do this anymore. I knew exactly what came next. In 10 minutes, she'd call. Then my Aunt Linda would call, asking why I wasn't helping family in crisis. Then my grandmother would get involved, reminding me that family comes first. But this time, I had a choice to make. The call came exactly 9 minutes later. I let it ring 3 times before answering, a small act of rebellion that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. Sarah, thank God. Mom's voice was breathless, shaky. She'd perfected that tone when I was 14, the one that made me drop everything and run to her side. Did you get my messages? I'm at Mercy General with Marcus. They won't let me see him until morning, and the lawyer wants $5,000 for bail. I don't have that kind of money, sweetheart. Not after helping Jenny with her wedding deposits. My sister Jenny's wedding. Another crisis Mom had inserted herself into, taking control of every detail while complaining constantly about the financial burden. I'd watched it unfold through carefully orchestrated family group texts, each message designed to highlight Mom's martyrdom. Mom, slow down. What exactly happened with Marcus? He was driving home from Kellerman's bar, you remember that place, where your father used to, she caught herself, pivoting smoothly. He was upset about something, I don't know what. You know how sensitive he is. Just like you were at that age. The police said his blood alcohol was twice the legal limit. Twice the legal limit. I closed my eyes, picturing Marcus at 8 years old, making me pinky promise that we'd always take care of Mom together. He'd been so small, so serious, already absorbing the weight of her emotional needs like a tiny sponge. Have you called a lawyer? I asked. I called 3. They all want money up front. Sarah, I know I don't deserve to ask, but could you possibly help with the bail? I'll pay you back, I swear. I'm picking up extra shifts at the clinic, and Dr. Morrison said there might be a raise coming. Mom. I cut her off before she could spiral into her financial sob story. I'll help with Marcus. But I need to understand what's really going on. This isn't just about one night of drinking. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted, smaller, more fragile. The wounded bird routine. He's been struggling since Christmas. Ever since you didn't come home for the holidays. He keeps saying the family is falling apart, that everyone's leaving. He looks up to you so much, Sarah. You're like a mother to him. There it was. The knife, twisted perfectly. My absence had caused Marcus's drinking. My selfishness had destroyed the family. My success in Chicago was built on the bones of my siblings' suffering. I pulled up my laptop and scrolled to Chapter 8, Guilt as a Weapon. I'd written this section last month, analyzing the specific phrases narcissistic parents use to maintain control over their adult children. My mother had just deployed 3 of them in under 30 seconds. I'll transfer the bail money tonight, I heard myself say. But I'm also coming home. Oh, Sarah, thank you. I knew you wouldn't abandon. I'm bringing my manuscript with me. This time the silence lasted 20 seconds. You're what? The book I've been writing. About childhood trauma. About parentification. About narcissistic parenting patterns. I kept my voice steady, professional. I thought you might want to read it before my publisher releases it in September. The marketing team thinks it could hit the bestseller list. I could hear her breathing, calculating. She'd always been quick, always 3 moves ahead in the chess game of emotional manipulation. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of your success. You know I've always supported your dreams. The lie hung in the air between Chicago and Millbrook like a bridge I was about to burn. I'll see you tomorrow, Mom. We have a lot to discuss. I hung up and immediately called Marcus's phone, knowing it would go straight to voicemail. It did. His voice on the recording sounded younger than his 24 years, still the little boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, whispering that he was scared Mom would disappear like Daddy did. The wire transfer took 12 minutes to process. $5,000, money I'd been saving for a down payment on a condo. Money that represented freedom, stability, a future untethered from the gravitational pull of Millbrook. As I typed in the routing numbers for Millbrook County Jail, I wondered how many times I'd made similar sacrifices. The emergency root canal for Jenny when she was 19. The car repair for my youngest brother Tyler when he was still in high school. The 3 months of Mom's mortgage payments when she'd been too depressed to work after her boyfriend Richard left. Each time, I told myself it was the last time. Each time, I'd been wrong. My phone lit up with a text from my editor, Janet, timestamped 11:58 p.m. Asterisk called you earlier but got VM. Random question, would you be open to moving your publication date up? We just lost our June tentpole book and your manuscript is testing incredibly well with focus groups. Could mean 40% bigger marketing budget. Thoughts? Asterisk. June instead of September. 4 months earlier than planned. I stared at the message, feeling something shift in my chest. Not the familiar knot of anxiety, but something sharper. Cleaner. Another text, this one from my Aunt Linda, asterisk Sarah, your mother is beside herself. That poor woman has been through enough. She needs family support right now, not judgment. I hope you remember who raised you, asterisk. Who raised you? As if Mom's version of motherhood, the midnight confessions, the emotional incest, the systematic destruction of my boundaries, deserved gratitude instead of a restraining order. I opened my laptop and scrolled to chapter 22, the flying monkeys. Dr. Reeves had introduced me to that term 3 years ago. The extended family members who enable the narcissist, who show up on cue to guilt and shame the scapegoat child back into compliance. Aunt Linda had been playing that role for 20 years, ever since I'd first tried to set boundaries at age 16. My fingers moved across the keyboard before my brain could stop them. Asterisk Janet, yes to June publication. I'll have the final 2 chapters to you by Friday. This book is ready, asterisk. Asterisk Linda, Marcus is 24 years old and has been Mom's emotional support system since I left for college. If you want to help family, help him get into therapy instead of enabling the same patterns that damaged all of us, asterisk. I hit send on both messages before I could second-guess myself. The book would come out in June. I'd be home tomorrow, manuscript in hand, ready to have the conversation I'd been avoiding my entire adult life. Mom would read every word, about the parentification, the emotional manipulation, the way she'd used her children as human antidepressants. She'd see herself reflected in the clinical language, the case studies, the detailed analysis of how narcissistic parents destroy their children's sense of self. And Millbrook would read it too. All 4,200 people who thought Patricia Coleman was a saint. I pulled up my publisher's website and searched for the pre-order page they created last month. The cover showed a child's drawing of a family, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun, with a large crack running down the middle of the paper. Wholesome at first glance, deeply unsettling when you looked closer. Just like my childhood. The pre-orders were already at 847 copies, mostly from therapists and social workers who followed my blog. But soon, it would be everywhere. Amazon recommendations, book club discussions, morning show interviews. My phone buzzed with another text from Mom, asterisk Bale posted. Marcus comes home tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you for saving our family, sweetheart. I love you so much, asterisk. I packed my suitcase and printed out all 248 pages of my manuscript. Time to go home. The drive to Millbrook took 4 hours and 37 minutes, exactly the same as it had every time I'd made this trip since college. I'd left Chicago at 6 a.m., hoping to arrive before the extended family could mobilize their guilt campaign, but my phone had been buzzing nonstop since I crossed the Iowa border. Marcus first, at 10:23 a.m., asterisk Sarah, you don't have to come. I'm fine. Mom's just being dramatic, asterisk. Even through text, I could hear the exhaustion in his words. The same tone I'd used at his age when I was still protecting everyone from Mom's chaos while slowly drowning in it myself. Then Jenny at 10:45, asterisk thank God you're coming home. Mom's been calling everyone since last night. She told Grandma Ruth that Marcus might go to prison and it's killing her. Grandma wants to have a family meeting tomorrow after church, asterisk. A family meeting. The last one had been when I'd missed Tyler's high school graduation for my licensing exam. Mom had orchestrated a full-scale intervention, complete with tears and accusations about my changing priorities and abandoning the family that sacrificed everything for me. I'd ended up flying home the next weekend and throwing Tyler a makeup party that cost me $800 I didn't have. The manuscript sat in the passenger seat beside me, 248 pages of evidence documenting exactly how these patterns worked. Chapter 19 specifically dealt with family meetings, how narcissistic parents weaponize group dynamics to isolate and shame the scapegoat child back into compliance. My phone rang at 11:15. Mom's contact photo filled the screen, a selfie she'd insisted on taking during my last visit home 18 months ago. In it, she's smiling brightly, her arm around me, while I look like a hostage. I'd noticed the expression when she posted it on Facebook with the caption, "My successful daughter came home. So proud of my baby girl." 43 people had liked it. Aunt Linda commented, "Patricia, you raised such amazing kids all by yourself. What a blessing." I let it go to voicemail, but she called back immediately. "Sarah, honey, where are you? I've been so worried about you driving alone. You know how dangerous the highways can be. I'm fine, Mom. About an hour out. Good, good. Listen, I picked Marcus up this morning and he's not in a good place emotionally. He keeps apologizing, saying he's a failure, that he's just like his father. You know how he gets when he's upset, so sensitive, just like you were. The comparison hit exactly as she intended. Marcus and I, both sensitive, both damaged by Dad's abandonment, both requiring Mom's special care and management. It was a story she'd been crafting for decades, positioning herself as the long-suffering hero of our family tragedy. What did his lawyer say about the charges? I asked. Well, that's the thing. Mr. Henderson thinks we might need a better attorney. Someone who specializes in DUI cases. He recommended a firm in Des Moines, but they want a $15,000 retainer. $15,000. The bail had just been the opening bid. Mom, Marcus is an adult. These are his consequences to handle. The silence stretched for 15 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted into what I'd learned to recognize as manufactured fragility. Sarah, I'm shocked. This is your little brother. The boy you used to read bedtime stories to, who looked up to you more than anyone in the world. How can you be so cold? I pulled into a gas station in Riverside, Iowa, population 987, and turned off the engine. The manuscript's title page stared up at me, The Perfect Mother, A Therapist's Journey Through Narcissistic Parenting. I'm not being cold. I'm being healthy. Marcus needs to face this himself, maybe get some counseling. Counseling? Her laugh was sharp, bitter. Not everyone needs therapy to solve their problems, Sarah. Some of us just need family support. But I guess your fancy Chicago education taught you that family doesn't matter anymore. Actually, my education taught me exactly how family patterns perpetuate trauma across generations. Another silence, longer this time. I could practically hear her recalculating, trying different approaches. Well, she said finally, I suppose you'll have plenty of theories to share when you get here. Your grandmother is very excited to see you. She's making your favorite pot roast for dinner. The guilt delivery system was fully activated. Grandma Ruth's pot roast, my childhood bedroom waiting with fresh sheets, the prodigal daughter returning to fix everything, just like always. 23 minutes to Millbrook. Time to find out if my book was just theory, or if I'd finally learned how to practice what I'd been preaching. The Millbrook city limits sign appeared at 12:47 p.m., faded and familiar, welcome to Millbrook, where community comes first. Someone had spray-painted a heart around the word, community, since my last visit, probably during homecoming week. The irony wasn't lost on me, a town that prided itself on togetherness had produced 4 Coleman children who couldn't function in healthy relationships. I drove past Henderson's Hardware, where Mr. Henderson still hand-painted sales signs in the window, past the Dairy Queen where I'd worked summers in high school, saving every dollar for college while Mom complained that I was never home anymore. The muscle memory of small-town claustrophobia kicked in immediately, that sensation of invisible walls closing in, of everyone watching, judging, keeping score. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler, * Mom said you're coming home with some kind of book. She's acting weird about it. Weirder than usual, *. Tyler was 22 now, the baby of the family, and somehow he'd managed to fly under Mom's radar more than the rest of us. He'd gotten a job at the John Deere plant after high school and moved into a duplex across town, close enough to avoid abandonment accusations, far enough to maintain some sanity. In my book, I'd written about him in chapter 20, The Invisible Child. He'd survived by becoming unremarkable, never excelling enough to threaten Mom's spotlight, never struggling enough to become her next project. I pulled into the driveway of 1247, Maple Street at exactly 1:15 p.m. The house looked smaller than I remembered, like all childhood homes do, but Mom had clearly been maintaining her image. Fresh mulch around the flower beds, American flag hanging perfectly straight, the little wooden sign by the front door that read, The Coleman Family, established 1995, where love lives. She'd bought that sign 3 years ago, right after I'd started therapy. Posted a photo of it on Facebook with a caption, Home is where your story begins. Dr. Reeves had asked me how that post made me feel. I'd said proud. She'd asked me to dig deeper. Under the pride was rage that Mom got to curate our family story while the rest of us lived with the damage. Marcus's beat-up Honda Civic was parked behind Mom's SUV, and I could see him through the kitchen window, slumped at the table where we'd eaten 10,000 silent dinners while Mom monologued about her day, her problems, her feelings. He looked up when my car door slammed, and even from 50 feet away, I could see the shame radiating from his posture. The front door opened before I reached it. Mom appeared in her favorite yellow sundress, the one that made her look younger, more vulnerable. She'd lost weight since Christmas, probably from the stress of Tyler moving out and having one less child to manage. Her smile was perfectly calibrated, relieved but not overwhelming, grateful but not desperate. Sarah. You made such good time. I was worried about construction delays. She hugged me, and I let her, inhaling the familiar combination of vanilla perfume and underlying anxiety that had been her signature scent my entire life. Over her shoulder, I saw Marcus hovering in the hallway, looking like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Hey, Mark. I pulled away from Mom and walked to my brother, manuscript tucked under my arm. Up close, he looked awful, bloodshot eyes, trembling hands, the gray pallor of someone who'd been drinking too much for too long. You okay? Been better. His voice cracked slightly. Sarah, I'm really sorry you had to. Marcus, don't apologize to your sister for needing help, Mom interrupted smoothly. Family helps family. That's what we do. She glanced at the papers under my arm, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not quite fear, but a heightened alertness, like a predator suddenly aware it might be prey. Is that your book project? It is. I set the manuscript on the coffee table, title page facing up. I thought we could all read it together. As a family. Mom's eyes fixed on the title page like she was deciphering a foreign language. The Perfect Mother, she read aloud, her voice carefully neutral. That's about me. It's about patterns, I said, settling into the armchair that used to be Dad's, the one she kept for 15 years like a shrine to abandonment. Generational trauma. How certain parenting styles affect child development. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Sarah, maybe this isn't the best time. Actually, it's exactly the right time. I opened to chapter 3, The Emotional Spouse. Mark, do you remember being 8 years old and Mom telling you that you were the man of the house after Dad left? His face went pale. Mom's smile became more brittle. Sarah, I think you're misremembering. Do you remember her saying that you and I were all she had left and that we had to stick together no matter what? I continued, reading directly from my notes. Do you remember the night she came into your room crying because her boyfriend Richard broke up with her, and she asked you to hold her while she slept? That's enough. Mom's voice had dropped to a whisper, but there was steel underneath. I don't know what kind of twisted therapy has convinced you to attack your own mother, but... You were 43 years old, I said to Marcus, ignoring her. Richard was boyfriend number 4 since Dad left. You were in 6th grade, and instead of comforting you about the bullying at school, she made you comfort her about her dating life. Marcus's hands were shaking visibly now. I remember that night. I remember thinking I had to protect her. Of course you did. Because she trained you to think that. I flipped to chapter 12. Listen to this paragraph. The parentified child learns that their worth depends on their ability to manage their parents' emotional state. They become hypervigilant to mood changes, sacrifice their own needs automatically, and carry guilt that belongs to adults who failed in their responsibilities. Mom stood up abruptly. I will not sit here and listen to this psychological garbage tear apart everything I sacrificed for you children. Do you have any idea what it was like raising 4 kids alone? Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if I was doing enough? Yes, I do know, I said quietly. Because you told us. Every night. For years. You made your 8-year-old son and your 10-year-old daughter responsible for managing your adult emotions. The front door opened, and Jenny walked in without knocking, still using her key, still treating this house like home base even though she'd been married for 3 years. She took one look at the scene and froze. What's going on? Tyler's outside. He's afraid to come in. Sarah brought some books she wrote about the family, Marcus mumbled. It's pretty intense. Jenny's expression hardened. At 30, she was the most successful of us at maintaining Mom's approval, probably because she'd learned to redirect all conflicts toward me. Seriously. Marcus gets arrested and you decide this is the time for family therapy. This is exactly the time, I said. Because this pattern is killing him. Look at him, Jen. Really look. She glanced at Marcus, and I saw her register what I was seeing, the tremor in his hands, the hollow look in his eyes, the way he hunched his shoulders like he was trying to disappear. Marcus has been Mom's emotional support system since I left for college, I continued. Just like I was before him. Just like you were when I went to therapy and started setting boundaries. We keep passing the burden to the next kid instead of addressing the real problem. Mom's face had gone completely white. Get out, she whispered. Take your book and your accusations and get out of my house. I looked at Marcus, still trembling at the kitchen table. At Jenny, torn between loyalty and growing recognition. At Tyler's silhouette hesitating by the front door. I'm not leaving without my brothers and sister understanding what happened to us, I said. Tyler finally stepped inside, closing the door behind him with deliberate quietness. At 22, he'd inherited Dad's height and Mom's calculating eyes, but unlike the rest of us, he'd learned to use silence as armor. He surveyed the scene, Mom rigid by the window, Marcus hunched at the table, Jenny standing like a referee between camps, and me holding 248 pages of family secrets. So, he said, settling onto the couch with practiced casualness, this is about that night when I was 14 and you made me sleep in your bed for 3 weeks because you were afraid of dying alone, isn't it? The room went dead silent. Mom's face cycled through emotions, shock, betrayal, then the familiar mask of wounded innocence sliding back into place. Tyler, honey, I was going through a terrible time. The doctor said those chest pains could have been serious. The doctor said it was anxiety, Tyler interrupted, his voice steady. And instead of getting help, you made your kid responsible for monitoring your breathing all night. I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. Jenny's mouth fell open. You never told me that happened. You were at state. Sarah was in Chicago. Marcus was working double shifts at the plant. Tyler shrugged. Who was I going to tell? I flipped through my manuscript to find chapter 16, the caretaker rotation. Every word I'd written felt hollow compared to hearing Tyler say it in his own voice, the matter-of-fact tone that masked years of normalized dysfunction. There's more, Marcus said suddenly, his voice barely audible. The night I got arrested. I wasn't just drunk. I was planning to drive to Chicago. To see Sarah. Because I couldn't. He stopped, swallowed hard. I couldn't handle being the only one left. Mom sank into her chair, all color draining from her face. For once, she seemed genuinely speechless. I've been having panic attacks since Christmas, Marcus continued, the words spilling out like water through a broken dam. Every time my phone rings and it's you, Mom, I can't breathe. Every time you say you're having a bad day, or you just need someone to talk to, I feel like I'm drowning. Jenny moved closer to Marcus, her earlier defensiveness cracking. Mark, why didn't you say something? Because look what happened when Sarah tried to set boundaries. 3 years of guilt trips, family meetings, everyone calling her selfish. He gestured at me with shaking hands. At least she escaped. I'm 24 years old and I can't leave Millbrook without Mom calling in crisis mode. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my photos, finding the screenshot I'd taken last month of Mom's Facebook post. Jen, look at this. The post showed a photo of Marcus mowing Mom's lawn, captioned, My sweet boy Marcus surprised me by doing yard work today. What did I do to deserve such a thoughtful son? Some children never forget how much their mothers sacrifice. Hashtag blessed, hashtag proud mom, hashtag family first. She posted this 3 hours after Marcus called me crying because he'd had to miss a job interview to drive you to your book club meeting, I told Jenny. The interview was for a position in Cedar Rapids. His chance to finally move out. I missed the interview because Mom said she was having chest pains again, Marcus added quietly. Turned out to be gas. Tyler laughed, but it came out bitter. Let me guess, the chest pain started right after you mentioned the interview. Marcus nodded. Mom finally found her voice, but it came out cracked, desperate. You're all ganging up on me. Making me sound like some kind of monster. I love you kids more than my own life. Everything I've done has been for you. No, I said firmly, standing up with my manuscript. Everything you've done has been for you. To meet your emotional needs, to avoid dealing with your own trauma, to maintain your image as the perfect mother. I opened to chapter 21. Listen to this case study. Patient describes mother who consistently manufactured medical emergencies during times when patient attempted independence. Hospital records show 17 emergency room visits over 5 years, with no underlying medical conditions diagnosed. Jenny grabbed the pages from my hands, scanning the text. Her face went progressively paler. Sarah, this is about us. All of us. Every story. Every pattern. 28 years of documentation. I looked directly at Mom. The publisher wants to move the release date up to June. Marketing thinks it could hit the New York Times list. You can't, Mom whispered. Sarah, please. This will destroy me. Everyone in town will know. Everyone in town will finally know the truth. Tyler stood up abruptly. I'm done. Mark, you can stay at my place tonight. Tomorrow we're calling that therapist in Cedar Rapids Sarah recommended. He looked at Jenny. You should read the whole book. All of us should. Tyler, wait, Mom started, but he was already heading for the door. I love you, Mom, but I won't be your emotional support system anymore. Find a real therapist. The door closed behind him with finality that seemed to echo through the house. Marcus looked at me with something I hadn't seen in his eyes since we were children, hope. Sarah. Can I get a copy of that book? The next morning, I woke up in my childhood bedroom at 5:47 a.m. to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. 12 missed calls from Mom, 6 from Aunt Linda, and 43 text messages in a family group chat that Mom had clearly weaponized overnight. Asterisk Aunt Linda, Sarah Elizabeth Coleman, your mother is in the ER. Are you proud of yourself? Asterisk. Asterisk Cousin Beth, what kind of daughter attacks her own mother like this? Patricia raised you better than that. Asterisk. Asterisk Uncle Mike, family business should stay private. This book idea is disgusting. Asterisk. And then, buried in the avalanche of guilt and shame, one message from Marcus at 2:33 a.m., asterisk, staying at Tyler's. Read 3 chapters of your book. Finally understand why I can't sleep at night. Thank you. Asterisk. I screenshot that message before the others could bury it completely. My editor Janet had texted at 11:15 p.m., asterisk, Sarah, getting calls from someone claiming to be your mother, demanding we stop publication. Obviously can't discuss contract details with non-parties, but wanted to give you a heads up. She seemed intense. Asterisk. I sat up in bed, surrounded by the pink flowered wallpaper Mom had chosen when I was 12 and refused to change because Sarah's room should stay exactly how she likes it, another way of freezing me in childhood, keeping me as her little girl who needed Mommy forever. Mom had spent the night making calls. Strategic, calculated calls to every family member, church friend, and community connection she could think of. By the time I made it downstairs at 6:30 a.m., she was already at the kitchen table with her laptop open, typing furiously. Good, you're awake, she said without looking up. I've been researching your publisher. Did you know that Hartwell and Associates has been sued 17 times for defamation? And your editor Janet Morrison was fired from her last job for publishing false memoirs. None of that was true. I'd researched Hartwell exhaustively before signing, and Janet's reputation was impeccable. But Mom had clearly spent hours crafting believable lies, the way she'd always done when reality didn't serve her purposes. I also called Pastor Williams. He's very concerned about this attack on Christian family values. He'd like to meet with you today to discuss the spiritual implications of destroying your mother's reputation for profit. Pastor Williams, who'd given the eulogy at Dad's funeral 5 years ago, describing him as a troubled man who abandoned his responsibilities. Mom had written that eulogy herself, I'd realized later, feeding the pastor her version of our family history. And I spoke with Mayor Henderson about the impact this could have on Millbrook's reputation. He's worried about tourism, about property values. People don't want to vacation in a town famous for child abuse allegations. Child abuse. She'd finally said it out loud, the words she'd been dancing around since yesterday. In her mind, naming the truth was equivalent to destroying innocent people. My phone rang. Jenny. Sarah, you need to fix this, she said without preamble. Mom's posting on Facebook about the book. She's saying you're having some kind of breakdown, that you're writing lies about the family for money. Grandma Ruth is talking about changing her will. I walked to Mom's laptop and saw her Facebook page open, 17 posts since midnight, each one more manipulative than the last. Photos of us as children with captions like, before my daughter's therapist convinced her that love equals abuse, and praying for my child who's been brainwashed against her own family. 42 comments already, all supporting her. All from people who'd watched her perform perfect motherhood for decades at church potlucks and school events. Janet Patterson commented that you should be ashamed of yourself, Jenny continued. Mrs. Rodriguez from the grocery store asked if you joined some kind of anti-family cult in Chicago. The smear campaign was working exactly as designed. By the time anyone read my book, Mom would have already controlled the narrative. I'd be the disturbed daughter who betrayed her saintly mother for fame and fortune. But then my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler, asterisk, Marcus just called. Mom's been texting him since 4 a.m., saying she's losing the will to live because of your book. Same manipulation playbook, different crisis. We're not falling for it anymore. Asterisk. Another text, this one from Marcus, asterisk, reading chapter 8 now. The part about suicide threats as control mechanisms, she's done this exact thing 12 times since you left for college. I kept a list. Asterisk. I looked at Mom, still typing her strategic lies, and realized something had shifted. For the first time in 28 years, her manipulation wasn't working on all of us simultaneously. The family system she'd spent decades perfecting was finally cracking. Jenny, I said into the phone, read the book before you choose sides. The whole book. I don't need to read anything to know you're hurting Mom. Chapter 14 is about you. About the eating disorder you developed senior year when Mom started commenting on your weight before prom. Silence. She told you that you looked chunky in your dress, remember? Said she was just trying to help because she loved you too much to let you embarrass yourself. That's not, she was trying to. Jenny's voice faltered. That was different. Read the book, Jen. Then we'll talk. I hung up and walked back to the kitchen table, where Mom was now refreshing her Facebook notifications with visible satisfaction. 47 people have commented support, she announced. The whole town knows what kind of daughter you really are now. Good, I said, surprising her. Let them read both versions and decide for themselves. For the first time since I'd arrived in Millbrook, Mom looked genuinely afraid. The doorbell rang at 7:23 a.m., followed immediately by 3 sharp knocks. Through the kitchen window, I could see Aunt Linda's silver Toyota parked behind my rental car, blocking me in. She'd brought reinforcements. Uncle Mike stood behind her on the porch, arms crossed, wearing his family enforcer expression. Patricia, open up. We need to talk to Sarah. Mom's face brightened with vindication. She'd called in the cavalry, just like she had when I was 17 and tried to break up with David because he'd started grabbing my wrist too hard during arguments. Back then, it had been Grandma Ruth and Aunt Linda tag-teaming me about not giving up on love too easily. I didn't ask them to come, Mom said, but her voice carried that particular tone of false innocence I'd learned to recognize. The same one she'd used when she'd accidentally run into my college advisor and mentioned her concerns about my emotional stability. Linda pushed past Mom the second the door opened, scanning the room like a detective surveying a crime scene. Her eyes landed on my manuscript, still spread across the coffee table, and her mouth tightened into a disapproving line. Sarah Elizabeth, your mother has been up all night crying. Look at her, does she look like the monster you've made her out to be in that gossip book? Mom had indeed cultivated the perfect victim appearance. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair slightly mussed, her favorite church dress wrinkled just enough to suggest genuine distress. She'd always been gifted at physical storytelling. It's not gossip, Linda. It's 28 years of documented patterns. Documented? Uncle Mike's voice boomed through the small living room. You mean you've been keeping some kind of file on your own family? Taking notes on every private moment so you could sell them to strangers? I pulled up my phone and showed him the text thread Marcus had sent me at 5:15 a.m., screenshots of Mom's messages from throughout the night. Asterisk, sweetheart, I can't stop shaking. My own daughter wants to destroy me. I don't think I can survive this betrayal. Please come home. I need you. Asterisk. This was sent to Marcus 4 hours after he told her he was staying at Tyler's to get some space, I said. He's 24 years old, Linda. When was the last time you sent emotional manipulation texts to your kids at 2 in the morning? Linda snatched the phone from my hands, reading the messages with growing discomfort. I watched her face change as she scrolled through the timestamp evidence, 17 messages between midnight and dawn, each one escalating in desperation. These could be fake, she said finally, but her conviction had wavered. Call Marcus yourself. Ask him. I don't need to call anyone. I know what kind of mother Patricia has been because I watched her raise you children after that worthless father of yours ran off. Uncle Mike nodded vigorously. Your mother worked 2 jobs, never missed a school event, kept this family together through hell itself. And this is how you repay her. By writing lies for money. The advance was $200,000, I said quietly. I'm donating half of it to the Children's Crisis Center in Des Moines. The part that helps kids who've been parentified. Mom's face went ashen. She hadn't expected me to mention the donation, probably because she'd been telling people I was doing this purely for profit. My phone buzzed. Jenny, asterisk, Sarah, I read chapter 14. We need to talk. Not about sides. About other things I remembered. Asterisk. Another text, this one from Tyler, asterisk, Marcus found Mom's emergency pills in her purse. The ones she takes during her heart episodes. They're expired. From 2019. She's been faking panic attacks for 4 years. Asterisk. I showed both messages to Linda, watching her carefully constructed worldview begin to crack around the edges. Even if some of this is true, she said slowly, airing family business in public is wrong. There are better ways to handle these concerns. Like what? Family meetings where everyone gangs up on the person asking questions. Therapy that she refuses to attend. Setting boundaries that result in guilt campaigns and flying monkeys showing up at dawn. Uncle Mike stepped forward, his face reddening. Don't you dare call your family flying monkeys, you ungrateful. Then stop acting like them, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. Stop showing up to shame me back into compliance every time she feels threatened by accountability. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the wall clock, the same clock that had marked time through 1,000 family crises, all managed the same way, protect Mom's feelings at everyone else's expense. Linda set my phone down carefully on the coffee table. What exactly do you want, Sarah? What would make you stop this book? I looked at Mom, still performing wounded motherhood in her chair, and felt something crystallize in my chest. I want her to read it first. Every page. And then I want her to get real therapy. Not pastoral counseling, not family meetings, actual trauma therapy with someone who specializes in narcissistic personality patterns. Mom's mask finally slipped completely. I am not a narcissist, she hissed. The words hung in the air like a confession. Mom's voice had shifted completely, gone was the trembling victim, replaced by something cold and sharp that I hadn't heard since I was 16 and had dared to question her version of why Dad left. I am not a narcissist, she repeated, standing up with sudden energy. That's just another one of those trendy psychology labels your generation uses to avoid taking responsibility for your own problems. Aunt Linda took a step back, clearly startled by the transformation. Uncle Mike's mouth fell open slightly. In 30 seconds, Mom had undone hours of careful victim performance. There it is, I said quietly, pulling out my phone to show them chapter 23, the narcissistic injury, when the mask falls. This is what happens when they're confronted with clinical accuracy. The fragile, wounded act disappears the moment you name what they actually are. Mom's face was flushed with rage now. You want to play psychologist with your own family? Fine. Let's talk about your problems, Sarah. Like how you've never maintained a relationship longer than 6 months because you're terrified of genuine intimacy. Or how you chose a career treating damaged children because misery loves company. Each word was calculated to wound, delivered with surgical precision. She'd been storing these observations for years, waiting for the right moment to deploy them. Or maybe we should discuss why you really moved to Chicago, she continued, her voice getting louder. Because David Kellerman called me last month. He's getting divorced, asked if you were single. Told me some very interesting things about your senior year in high school. My blood went cold. David, who I'd broken up with after he'd started controlling my schedule, monitoring my friendships, showing up uninvited at my job. David, who'd spent our entire relationship telling me I was too sensitive and imagining problems that didn't exist. What did he tell you? I managed to ask. Mom smiled, the same satisfied expression she'd worn when she'd successfully convinced my college advisor to recommend I stay closer to home. He said you accused him of being manipulative and controlling, but he was just trying to help you become more confident. Sound familiar? You've been diagnosing normal people as abusers your whole adult life. Uncle Mike was nodding along, clearly relieved to have the focus shifted away from Mom's behavior. Sarah, maybe you should consider that the problem isn't everyone else. David grabbed my wrists hard enough to leave bruises, I interrupted. He isolated me from my friends, told me my family was too needy, and convinced me I was crazy for wanting to go to college out of state. And when I finally broke up with him, Mom spent 3 months trying to get us back together. He was good for you, Mom snapped. He would have kept you grounded, kept you from running off to pursue these ridiculous theories about family trauma. Instead, you chose a career that validates your victim mentality. Aunt Linda was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Patricia, maybe we should. No, Linda. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around Sarah's delicate feelings. She wants to play therapist. Let's examine why someone becomes so obsessed with finding abuse everywhere they look. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, asterisk, Tyler and I are outside. We can hear yelling from the driveway. Should we come in? Asterisk. I was about to respond when Jenny's car pulled up behind Linda's Toyota. Through the window, I watched my sister sit in her driver's seat for a full minute, manuscript pages visible in her lap, before finally getting out. When she walked through the front door, her face was streaked with tears. Chapter 9, she said without preamble. About emotional incest. About how you made Sarah your confidant about your sex life when she was 13. Mom went completely white. Jenny, you're taking things out of context. You described your dates to her in detail. Made her help you pick out lingerie for boyfriends. Asked her opinion about men's bodies. Jenny's voice was shaking. I thought that was normal. I thought all mothers talk to their daughters that way. Uncle Mike cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe this isn't the time for. When I asked the time. Jenny demanded. When Sarah publishes the book and the whole world reads about how our mother used her kids as surrogate spouses. About how she made Marcus sleep in her bed during thunderstorms until he was 15. That's enough, Mom whispered, but her authority was crumbling visibly. Jenny held up her phone. I called David Kellerman this morning. Asked him about senior year. He laughed and said Mom had called him regularly after you broke up, telling him exactly where you'd be and when. She orchestrated those coincidental meetings at the grocery store, the coffee shop, the library. The room spun slightly. What meetings? The ones where he'd show up and apologize, promise to change, beg you to give him another chance. Mom was feeding him information about your schedule for months. I stared at Mom, watching the last pieces of her carefully constructed reality crumble. You sabotaged my breakup. For 6 months. I was trying to save you from making a terrible mistake. Marcus and Tyler appeared in the doorway, drawn by the shouting. Marcus took one look at Mom's face and said quietly, she did the same thing with my girlfriend Rebecca sophomore year. Told her I was too emotionally fragile for a serious relationship. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler stepped fully into the living room, his face grim. Rebecca told me last week that Mom called her parents in 2020, said I was struggling with alcohol dependency, and that dating me would enable destructive behavior. I wasn't even drinking back then except for beer on weekends. That's not, I was concerned about your emotional state, Mom started, but Marcus cut her off. You told my manager at the plant that I was having family difficulties and needed a lighter workload. Cost me the promotion to shift supervisor. I found out when Jake Morrison asked why I was getting special treatment for mental health issues. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. I could see Uncle Mike and Aunt Linda exchanging increasingly uncomfortable glances as the scope of Mom's interference became undeniable. How many of our relationships did you sabotage? Jenny asked, her voice hollow. How many jobs, friendships, opportunities? Tyler pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. I'm calling Rebecca. Right now. I want to know exactly what you told her family. Tyler, please, Mom's voice cracked, but it wasn't the manipulative fragility from earlier. For the first time, she looked genuinely panicked. No, he said, already dialing. Rebecca? It's Tyler Coleman. Yeah, I know it's been a while. Listen, I need to ask you something about 2020 when we broke up. We could all hear Rebecca's voice through the phone, tinny but clear enough to make out words. Your mom said you were having panic attacks, said you'd been drinking heavily since your dad died, that dating would make your depression worse. Tyler's face went ashen. Rebecca, my dad died in 2018. I wasn't depressed in 2020. I was actually doing really well. Oh my God, Tyler. She said you were too embarrassed to admit you were struggling, that I needed to let you go so you could focus on recovery. He hung up and stared at Mom with an expression I'd never seen before, not anger, but something colder. Complete disillusionment. Dad's death. You used Dad's death as an excuse to destroy my relationship 2 years later. Aunt Linda sank onto the couch, the manuscript pages scattered around her. Patricia, what Tyler's describing, that's not protective mothering. That's systematic sabotage, I finished. Chapter 18 covers it specifically. How narcissistic parents destroy their children's external relationships to maintain dependency. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet, Sarah, your pre-orders jumped to 2,847 overnight. Someone's been posting about the book online, mostly supportive comments from adult children with similar experiences. Whatever's happening there, the story is resonating. 2,847 people. Strangers who recognize their own families in my chapter summaries, who understood the patterns I documented. Mom, Jenny said quietly, I need you to tell me the truth about something. When I was applying to colleges, I got a scholarship offer from Northwestern. Full ride, journalism program. But the letter never came. You said they decided to give it to someone else. Mom's silence stretched for 30 seconds. 45. A minute. Where's the letter, Mom? Jenny's voice was deadly calm. I was protecting you. Chicago was too far, too dangerous for a young woman. Where is the letter? In my bedroom closet, Mom whispered. In the blue shoebox with your school papers. Jenny stood up so fast she knocked over the coffee table, sending my manuscript pages flying across the floor. You kept it. You kept my full scholarship letter for 8 years. She ran upstairs, her footsteps thundering through the house. We could hear her tearing through the closet, boxes hitting the floor. When she came back down 5 minutes later, she held an unopened envelope from Northwestern University, postmarked March 15, 2015. Full scholarship, she read aloud, her voice breaking. Renewable for 4 years. I could have graduated debt-free. I could have been a journalist instead of working at the insurance office. The room fell completely silent except for Jenny's ragged breathing. Uncle Mike stood up slowly. Patricia, I can't. I need to leave. Mike, please. No. This isn't normal protective behavior. This is. He looked around the room at all of us. This is exactly what Sarah wrote about. He walked out without another word. Through the window, I watched him sit in his truck for a long moment before driving away. Mom looked around the room at her 4 children, her sister-in-law, and the scattered pages of my manuscript documenting 28 years of calculated control. I love you, she whispered. Everything I did was because I love you too much to let you get hurt. No, I said, gathering my papers from the floor. Everything you did was because you were terrified of being alone. Aunt Linda hadn't said a word for 10 minutes, just sat on the couch staring at Jenny's Northwestern letter like it was evidence in a murder trial. Finally, she looked up at Mom with an expression I'd never seen before, not anger, but profound disappointment. Patricia, I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. When Sarah got into Stanford, you told the whole family she decided it was too expensive and chose Northwestern instead. But Sarah never mentioned money being an issue when I talked to her about college. My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten about Stanford, had buried that particular betrayal so deep it rarely surfaced, even in therapy. But Linda remembered. Linda, who'd offered to help with college expenses, who'd been so proud when I got into her alma mater. Stanford offered me a partial scholarship, I said slowly, the memory crystallizing. I needed to accept by May 1, 2010. I was planning to take student loans for the rest. Mom's face went through several expressions before settling on defensive. Sarah, you know we couldn't afford. I called Stanford to accept, I continued, ignoring her. April 30th, the day before the deadline. They told me someone had already called that morning to decline on my behalf. Tyler's mouth fell open. Mom. You didn't. I was protecting her from crushing debt. You impersonated me, I said, the full scope of it hitting me like a physical blow. You called Stanford University and pretended to be me to decline my acceptance. Aunt Linda stood up abruptly. That's identity fraud, Patricia. That's a federal crime. It was 18 years ago, Mom protested weakly. And it worked out fine, Sarah got an excellent education at Northwestern. In your backyard, Marcus said quietly. Where you could monitor her every move. Jenny was crying now, clutching her own stolen letter. How many of us did this happen to? Tyler, did you even apply anywhere out of state? University of Iowa, he said grimly. Got accepted to their engineering program. Mom said the acceptance letter never came. He looked directly at her. Where is it? The same place as Jenny's scholarship, I said. Along with probably a dozen other opportunities we'll never know about. My phone rang. Dr. Reeves, my therapist in Chicago. I texted her yesterday about coming home for the confrontation, and she'd scheduled a check-in call. Hi, Sarah. How are you holding up with your family visit? I looked around the living room, Mom collapsed in her chair, Jenny holding evidence of stolen dreams, Tyler and Marcus staring at our mother like they were seeing her for the first time, Aunt Linda gathering her purse with obvious intention to leave. Actually, Dr. Reeves, could I put you on speaker? I think my family needs to hear something from a professional. Mom's eyes went wide with panic. Sarah, you can't. This is Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, I said, switching to speaker mode. She's a licensed clinical psychologist who specializes in family trauma. Dr. Reeves, I'm here with my mother and siblings. We're discussing the patterns I wrote about in my book. Hello, everyone. Sarah, are you comfortable having this conversation with your family present? I am. Actually, I think it's necessary. Could you explain what parentification looks like to people who might not recognize it? Dr. Reeves' professional voice filled the room. Parentification occurs when children are given responsibilities or roles that should belong to adults. This includes emotional caretaking, like comforting parents about adult problems, and practical caretaking, like managing household responsibilities or younger siblings. It often involves making children feel responsible for their parents' emotional stability. Marcus leaned toward the phone. What about sleeping in your parents' bed during storms? Is that normal? How old were you when this happened? It started when I was 8. Lasted until I was 15. That would be considered emotional incest, using a child to meet emotional needs that should be met by adult partners or friends. It's particularly harmful because it teaches children that their worth depends on managing someone else's feelings. Mom stood up suddenly. I'm not listening to this anymore. You people can sit here and let some stranger psychoanalyze our family, but I won't be part of it. Dr. Reeves, Jenny said quickly, what about hiding college acceptance letters from your kids? The pause was long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Our mother intercepted and hid college acceptance letters. One from 8 years ago, one from 18 years ago. Is that something you've seen before? That would be classified as severe control and sabotage behavior, often seen in parents who have pathological fears of abandonment. It's quite serious. It involves deception, identity fraud, and deliberately limiting your children's opportunities to maintain dependency. Tyler caught my eye and mouthed, how many others? I walked to Mom's bedroom closet, following the path Jenny had taken. The blue shoebox was still open, papers scattered across the floor. But there were other boxes. A red one labeled Marcus, school. A green one marked Tyler, important. I brought both boxes downstairs and dumped their contents on the coffee table while Dr. Reeves continued explaining attachment disorders. Iowa State acceptance letter for Marcus, dated March 2018. Full scholarship to their agriculture program. University of Colorado acceptance for Tyler, engineering program, dated April 2020. 3 job offer letters addressed to me from 2019, forwarded from my old Chicago address to this house. Positions I'd never known existed. Marcus picked up his Iowa State letter with shaking hands. I could have had a full ride, he whispered. I could have studied sustainable farming, started my own business. The question, Dr. Reeves was saying, is whether the parent can acknowledge these behaviors and commit to real change, or if the patterns are too entrenched to modify. Mom appeared in the doorway, suitcase in hand. I'm going to stay with Ruth for a while, she announced. When you all come to your senses and remember who raised you, who sacrificed everything, you know where to find me. She walked out the front door without looking back, leaving the 4 of us staring at 28 years of stolen future spread across our childhood coffee table. Dr. Reeves, I said into the phone, staring at the scattered evidence of decades of sabotage, my mother just left. What happens now? Sarah, this is actually a positive development. It means you can focus on healing with your siblings without having to manage her reactions. How are Marcus, Tyler, and Jenny processing these discoveries? Marcus was holding his Iowa State letter like it might disintegrate. Dr. Reeves, I'm 24 and I've been living at home, working at the plant, thinking I wasn't smart enough for college. This letter, it's a full scholarship. From 6 years ago. Marcus, that sense of not being smart enough is common in parentified children. Your mother needed you to believe you had limited options to keep you available for her emotional needs. Tyler stood up abruptly. I need to call Rebecca back. And Colorado. I need to find out if any of these programs are still available. Tyler, wait, Jenny said, wiping her eyes. Dr. Reeves, what about the rest of us? Sarah got out, but we've all been stuck in this system. How do we even begin to untangle this? My phone buzzed with a text from Grandma Ruth, asterisk, your mother is here crying her eyes out. Says you children have turned against her over some book. This is breaking my heart, Sarah. Family doesn't air dirty laundry. Asterisk. I showed the text to my siblings. Marcus snorted. Even Grandma Ruth. The flying monkeys are already mobilizing. Dr. Reeves, I said, how do we handle the extended family who's going to pressure us to reconcile and forget all this? That's where boundaries become crucial. You'll need to decide individually how much you want to share and with whom. Some family members may never understand, especially if they've been getting a different version of your mother's story for years. Another text, this one from Pastor Williams, asterisk, Sarah, your mother has asked me to mediate a family healing session this Sunday after service. I hope you'll consider attending. Forgiveness is God's greatest gift. Asterisk. Jenny read it over my shoulder. A family healing session. Where we all apologize to Mom for discovering the truth. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Janet, my editor, asterisk, Sarah, I hate to bother you during family time, but we're getting unprecedented interest in your book. 3 morning shows want interviews. The Today Show specifically requested you appear with a family member who's experienced these patterns. Would any of your siblings be willing to participate? Asterisk. I looked at Marcus, still clutching his stolen acceptance letter, at Jenny holding her Northwestern scholarship, at Tyler already on his phone with the University of Colorado admissions office. Guys, I said slowly, my publisher wants to know if any of you would consider doing interviews about our experience. National television. The Today Show. The room went silent except for Tyler's voice. Yes, I'd like to speak to someone about late admission for fall 2024. I have some unusual circumstances. Marcus set down his letter. Sarah, if I go on TV and talk about this, Mom will never forgive me. Marcus, Jenny said quietly, look around this room. Look at these letters she hid from us. When was the last time she actually apologized for anything? Really apologized, not just played victim. He was quiet for a long moment. Never. Not once in 24 years. Tyler covered his phone. Colorado says they'd consider me for spring semester if I can provide documentation of extenuating circumstances that prevented my original enrollment. Think stolen acceptance letters count as extenuating circumstances? Dr. Reeves' voice came through the speaker. What I'm hearing is 4 adult children discovering they've been systematically manipulated and controlled. The question isn't whether your mother will forgive you for telling the truth. The question is whether you can forgive yourselves for staying silent. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a Facebook notification. Mom had posted again, asterisk, at my mother's house seeking comfort after my children decided money from a book deal was more important than family loyalty. Praying God will soften their hearts and help them remember who loved them when no one else would. Asterisk. 43 likes already. She's not going to stop, I said, showing them the post. This is just the beginning. By tomorrow, half the town will think we're ungrateful children who betrayed our saint of a mother for profit. Marcus stood up, determination replacing the shame in his eyes. Then maybe it's time the town heard our side of the story. He looked directly at me. When do you need an answer about the Today Show? I called Janet back at 3:47 p.m., sitting in my childhood bedroom while my siblings made phone calls downstairs, Tyler to Colorado admissions, Marcus to Iowa State's alumni office, Jenny to Northwestern's journalism department to ask about their graduate programs. The house buzzed with an energy I'd never felt before, not the frantic crisis management of my childhood, but purposeful action. Janet, I have 3 siblings who want to participate in interviews. But I need to know, if Mom tries to interfere with publication, what are our legal protections? Sarah, your mother called our legal department 4 times today. She's threatening to sue for defamation, claiming the book contains fabricated stories designed to destroy her reputation. Our lawyers reviewed your manuscript again this morning. Everything you've written falls under protected speech. It's your personal experience, documented with dates and verifiable details. She has no legal standing. I looked at the stack of hidden acceptance letters on my desk. What if I told you we just found physical evidence of her sabotaging our opportunities? College letters she intercepted, job offers she hid. Would that strengthen the book's credibility? Jesus, Sarah. You found actual letters. That's criminal behavior. Document everything. Photograph the postmarks, the unopened envelopes. This isn't just family dysfunction anymore, it's systematic fraud. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Local area code. Janet, I need to call you back. Sarah Coleman. This is Detective Ray Morrison with Millbrook Police Department. I understand there might be some concerns about mail tampering we should discuss. My heart stopped. Detective Morrison. Your brother Tyler filed a report about intercepted correspondence this afternoon. Federal mail tampering is a serious charge, Miss Coleman. I'd like to speak with you and your siblings about the evidence you've recovered. I walked downstairs where Tyler was hanging up with Colorado, his face brighter than I'd seen it in years. They'll hold my spot for spring enrollment if I can provide documentation by Friday, he announced. I'm actually going to college. Tyler, did you call the police? Damn right I did. Mail tampering is a federal crime. I called the postal inspector too. He held up his acceptance letter. This was postmarked April 15, 2020. I didn't find out I'd been accepted until today. That's 4 years of stolen opportunities. Marcus looked up from his own phone call. Iowa State says their agriculture program has a special track for non-traditional students. If I can prove unusual circumstances prevented my enrollment, they'll reconsider my application for fall 2025. Jenny appeared from the kitchen, laptop in hand. I just submitted my Northwestern graduate application. They have a special program for working journalists who want to finish their degree. The admissions counselor was very interested when I explained my delayed enrollment situation. Detective Morrison arrived at 4:23 p.m., a tall man with graying hair who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. This is unusual territory for our department, he admitted, settling at our kitchen table. Mail tampering typically involves stolen packages or identity theft for financial gain. But what you're describing, deliberately intercepting college acceptance letters. Is it a crime? Marcus asked. It's a federal offense to knowingly intercept mail addressed to another person, yes. The question is prosecutorial discretion, whether the postal inspector thinks this warrants charges. He looked at the scattered letters. How long has this been going on? At least 18 years, I said. Probably longer. There might be more letters we haven't found yet. Detective Morrison took photos of each envelope, documenting the postmarks and addresses. I have to ask, where is your mother now? At our grandmother's house, Jenny said. Telling everyone we've been brainwashed by Sarah's therapist. His radio crackled. Morrison here. Yes, I'm at the Coleman house. What? When did that happen? He looked at us apologetically. Your mother just filed a harassment complaint against all 4 of you. Claims you're conspiring to destroy her reputation and demanding she submit to unlawful psychological evaluation. The audacity was breathtaking. Even facing criminal charges for mail tampering, she was still playing offense. Detective, I said, my book comes out in June. It documents these exact patterns, how she manipulates situations to make herself the victim when confronted with accountability. This harassment complaint is textbook deflection behavior. My phone rang. Dr. Reeves, returning my earlier message. Sarah, I got your voicemail about the police involvement. How are you holding up? Dr. Reeves, she just filed harassment charges against all of us for discovering the letters she hid. That's called DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. It's extremely common when narcissistic individuals face exposure. The fact that she's escalating this dramatically suggests your book is going to be very threatening to her constructed identity. Detective Morrison was listening intently. Doctor, this is Detective Morrison. In your professional opinion, is this pattern of behavior, hiding mail, filing false complaints, consistent with specific psychological conditions? I can't diagnose someone I haven't evaluated, Detective. But I can say that systematic sabotage of children's opportunities, combined with aggressive victim playing when confronted, fits well-documented patterns of pathological control. Tyler's phone buzzed. He answered, then his face went pale. That was my manager at the plant. Someone called claiming to be from the police department, saying I was under investigation for elder abuse. My boss wants me to come in tomorrow to discuss my legal troubles. We all stared at him. Mom had spent exactly 3 hours at Grandma Ruth's house before launching a coordinated attack on our jobs, our reputations, our futures. Just like she always had. But this time, we had evidence. This time, we weren't facing her alone. And this time, the whole world was about to read exactly what Patricia Coleman was capable of. The Today Show interview aired on a Tuesday morning in June, exactly 1 week after my book hit number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. Marcus, Jenny, Tyler, and I sat together on the familiar orange couch, facing Hoda Kotb's gentle but probing questions about growing up with a narcissistic parent. What surprises me most, Hoda said, is how coordinated your mother's sabotage was. Tyler, you mentioned she called your workplace pretending to be police. Tyler nodded, calmer than I'd ever seen him. She called John Deere claiming I was under investigation for elder abuse. My manager had to contact real police to verify it was false. That's when Detective Morrison added filing false reports to her charges. The camera panned to show the stack of hidden acceptance letters we'd brought as props, visual evidence that spoke louder than any explanation. Marcus, you've now enrolled at Iowa State at age 25. How does that feel? Like I'm finally living my own life, he said simply. I start their sustainable agriculture program in August. For the first time in my life, I made a decision without considering how it would affect my mother's emotional state. My phone had been buzzing non-stop during the interview, messages from readers, interview requests, and one text that made me smile, Sarah, this is Rebecca, Tyler's ex. Watched the show. Tyler and I are having coffee next week to catch up properly. Thank you for helping him find his voice. But the message that mattered most came at 10:47 a.m., just as the interview ended, Dr. Reeves here. Watching with my Tuesday trauma group. Standing ovation from 12 adult children who recognized their own families. You did something extraordinary today. 6 months later, I was back in Millbrook for Marcus's going away party before he left for Iowa State. The house at 1247 Maple Street had a for sale sign in the yard. Mom had moved to Florida after pleading guilty to federal mail tampering charges, receiving 2 years probation and mandatory psychiatric evaluation. She tried to contact us through flying monkeys for months, but one by one, extended family members had read my book and stopped carrying her messages. Aunt Linda had been the turning point. She'd called in September to apologize. Sarah, I read every page twice. I kept thinking about all the times I pressured you kids to be understanding of your mother's behavior. I enabled 28 years of abuse. Tyler walked into the kitchen where I was helping Jenny pack Marcus's dishes. Colorado called. I made Dean's List last semester. At 23, he was thriving in engineering school, living in a dorm, dating a classmate named Maria who thought our family dynamics were impressively healthy for people who've been through trauma. Speaking of impressive, Jenny said, holding up her phone, Northwestern just accepted me into their investigative journalism master's program. Full scholarship. Apparently, my essay about overcoming educational sabotage resonated with the admissions committee. Marcus appeared in the doorway, car keys in hand, looking nothing like the broken young man who'd been arrested for drunk driving 18 months ago. Iowa State Housing just called. My roommate is a kid from Nebraska whose parents are also narcissists. Apparently, there are a lot of us. We loaded the last boxes into his Honda Civic, the same car he'd driven drunk that November night when everything started unraveling. Now it was taking him toward a future mom had tried to steal from him 6 years ago. Sarah, he said, giving me a hug that lasted 30 seconds, thank you for coming home. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for saving us. I looked around at my 3 siblings, all pursuing dreams they'd thought were impossible, all free from the gravitational pull of our mother's manufactured crises. Tyler was building bridges in Colorado. Jenny was investigating stories that mattered. Marcus was learning to grow things instead of just surviving. We saved each other, I said. That's what family actually looks like. As Marcus drove away toward Iowa, I understood finally what recovery from bad parenting looked like, not the children learning to manage the parents' dysfunction, but the children learning they deserved better than dysfunction at all. Some damage can't be undone. But some chains, once recognized, can finally be broken. The book that started as my story had become our story. And our story, it turned out, belonged to thousands of people who'd been waiting their whole lives to hear someone say, it wasn't your fault. You deserved better. And it's not too late to claim the life they tried to steal from you. That's the type of bad parenting kids don't recover from, until they do.